Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very, very special episode of the Stacey West podcast. I'm Ben. This is episode 100, which is... I mean, I don't really know how we've managed to get this far without potentially killing each other, but I'm actually joined by Gary, and Gary's doing all the techie stuff today, so...
I am on... Yeah, I've got to be on point with techie things. So I'm going to be pressing buttons and bringing videos in and all that sort of stuff. So just so we were talking off air and we said it'd be great if we got 40 people watching. And at the moment, we're already at 52.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
52 people have chosen to look at us on a Thursday evening.
I mean, I can think of better things to do with a Thursday evening, to be honest, but there we go.
Me too. It's exciting, mate. Yeah, I mean, episode 100. Obviously, we've got to mention about the what the club put out earlier as well, with in conjunction with Mr. Ray. That was phenomenal, very observational indeed.
Yes, yeah, absolutely floored me. That did. I was not expecting that at all. So yeah, thank you to everyone at the club and of course to Chris for getting that sorted. It was very, very much appreciated. It featured as the little pre-chat thing as well, or pre-stream thing.
It's all right, man. It's on the screen. That's it. But I did notice that the Stacey West Live in the top corner actually blocked out the Man United badge, and to a degree, it's also blocking out the Transformers pictures in the background. I noticed as well. I didn't realise you had a 5-year-old whose bedroom you filmed in.
It's the second time you've made that joke, and it doesn't get funny. But
it gets just funnier every time.
Just for you guys, I'll sort something out. Hang on. You can talk while I do this if you like.
In the meantime, I will ad-lib then. So look, this is going to be really, really exciting. Looking at Ben's game collection. My Lord, look at all of that. Do you know what? It's almost as if he had those shirts ready, isn't it? Look at that.
There we go.
Is that a match worn?
There we go.
Is it a match worn Michael Bostwick, that one, is it?
What did you say?
Is it a match worn Michael Bostwick?
I believe it is, yes.
Wow, that's very good. Yeah. Look, on the main crux of it tonight is the top 100. We did the vote, 2,500 votes, or more than 2,500 votes came in for some very suspicious characters indeed. There's been controversy on every one that I've done, whether it's Liam Bridcut, John Akindi, or Bradley Wood. But we're down to the 25. We're down to an elite now. Look, these are the cream of the crop. These are, in my opinion, a collection of the very best players over the last 30 or 40 years. And I don't think there'll be a lot of arguments when we get down to the top 10. It'll be more on placings. Just so you know, and this is research. Between these 25 players, there are 4,962 appearances for Lincoln. Between them, they scored 712 goals. There are 15 winners' medals amongst them for titles and cups and things. 16 Player of the Year awards.
Wow.
Interesting, isn't it?
It just shows you really that I think people are going to obviously see that there's, with such a wealth of players to choose from, like the sort of range in eras and teams and everything else, it's vast, isn't it? Like it's an amazing array of players. And when you look at particularly the top 25, but you look at all of the other ones, just so many quality players that would walk into any side, on their day. They would absolutely walk into any first 11 really, in the prime.
Now, before we get started, let's just have a quick look at some of these comments, because at the moment there are 108 people watching, which is unreal. Kate already been on. Evening, guys. Hope you're both well. Hoping someone like Forrester or Ainsworth wins it. Get the feeling Yayo will. Interesting.
Okay.
We've got Keith. Been looking forward to this.
Good stuff.
Kev's on board. This should be a belter of a show. Well, let's hope so. Malcolm, hi Boyo and Ben. That's in reference to Gary being too formal, by the way. But Malcolm and I have been having over the week. Sam White is international, listening from New Zealand, which is phenomenal. Look, thank you to everyone who's commenting. It would be remiss of me not to say thank you, but I can't get everybody's on, I'm afraid. Adam Leaders put FIFA down for this.
Wow. What's your ultimate team like, mate? Let us know.
And Jake, evening you two, have my favourite podcast host as well. That'll be me.
Well, I don't know.
We should have got Jake on. We've been so manic this week. But thank you, Jake, for all the work that you do on the site, mate. It is hugely appreciated. So, shall we get the show on the road?
Let's do it.
I will get on my techie bit and we will get the first video up. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the top 25 starts with...
Number 25, Harry Anderson.
A rather muted Alan Long, but he gets much more excited as he goes through. So, yes, at number 25, we've got Harry Anderson. And I think before we discuss him in any way, roll VT Errol. I'm delighted to be joined by Harry Anderson. He has been voted 25th best player of a generation, the highest placed member of the current squad. How does it feel, Harry?
I'm absolutely over the moon. I really appreciate all the votes. It means a lot to me because obviously I've got a great love for this club, and to be voted in the top 100 is, I'm very proud.
Thank you. And from your City career, what moments really stand out for you and stick with you?
It's got to be winning the 3 trophies, I think, and obviously playing at Wembley. It's an experience that I'll never forget.
Thank you. And there are 3 players who have played with you during your time who are also in the top 25. Who would you pick from your time at City to be one of the best players of a generation, and why?
I think it's got to be Lee Frecklington, and I definitely think he will more than doubt be in there. I think he was the captain when I was there. He's a really good role model, and I definitely feel like he deserves to be in there.
Smashing, thank you. And do you have a message to the fans that have voted for you at all?
Just thank you, and hopefully I can do even more for the club, and hopefully more trophies in the future.
Especially as you approach your 175th appearance, and not the 150th.
Yeah, 175. Hopefully get 200 this year. That's my aim.
There we go.
Harry Anderson, 2 points from that. First of all, the 175 was reference to the fact that I screwed up my research, as I revealed on the pod last time out. Obviously, you also mentioned Lee Frecklington there, and unfortunately, Lee isn't in the top 25. He came just outside as well. But Ben, thoughts on Harry Anderson?
Well, I mean, he's sort of epitomised what the club's been over the past few years, isn't it? You know, he's come on leaps and bounds as a player. He has just been, I mean, you know, obviously coming in during the National League on loan, making that deal a permanent one, and Kate's got it there. I think, you know, the fact is that he's proven every time someone doubts him, he's managed to prove his doubt is wrong. Particularly the start of this season, I think there was a lot of people saying, "Oh, you know, can he do it? Can he cut it in League One?" I think there was some rumours about him potentially leaving during the close season, but he seems like he's really settled here. He's happy, and he's the kind of player that, well, really, he's not irreplaceable, but he's definitely inimitable. I think he's got the enthusiasm, he's got the youth on his side, but despite the fact he's still young, he is the most experienced player in a Lincoln City shirt in our team at the moment. Have you swallowed a dictionary? No, it's because I can see my face. That's what it is. Why, has your face got indomitable written on it? Yes, no, inimitable, Gary, inimitable.
Whatever, you know, my pronunciation book's in the bin, Chris Brazen. No, I think, you know, my admiration for Harry Anderson is huge. I think there's an element, and this will upset Kev Barwise, there's an element of the Scott Kerr about him in that he's had to prove himself all over again. And I think when he first came in, a few people thought he might not be a Michael Appleton player. I think at times, when I say one-dimensional, I don't mean that negatively to him, but we knew what we were going to get with Harry. He's big, he's strong, he gets down the line, you can't knock him off the ball, he does straight lines all the time. This season has been completely different. And I mean, we started to see him arriving at the back post, I think, probably last season. Rotherham, Burton, Everton, he arrived late in the box. So he had added that to his game. But I think now he's bringing the ball inside a lot more as well. Huge asset, massive player for the club. Now, we actually have a time limit. So I'll drop a couple of comments. Pete, my good friend Pete, says, I stand by my claim, Lincoln's first 1 million player. Let's hope so. Bubs is on board. Harry's longer hair makes him look faster down the wing. He come on the other night and my dad said, I like Harry Anderson, but I wish he'd get his bloody haircut. And I thought, well, I don't want him to say that to Mo tonight if he's watching. Not that he probably is. And Kate says, Harry's not like Scott Kerr. He actually makes an impact on games. Somebody call the fire brigade. Right. We have 20 minutes to get the next 5 in. So we've got a couple of minutes each. Are we ready for another one, ladies and gentlemen?
Let's go.
We're going look for the number video. Alan Long, take it away.
At number 24, Kevin Austin.
Super Kev.
Super Kev.
Yeah. Well, just a bit of a City legend, really, isn't he? I think obviously it's, your mind gets drawn straight away to the fact that he's been, he's obviously taken way too soon from us, but he was a rock. I think when he played for us, popped up at the other end as well. It was sort of, I think he was relatively early in my City supporting years. I think when was he in?
97, 98 when he.
Yeah,
I've just seen pictures of you in 97 as a little child. So
I'm not gonna be displaying those just yet.
No, I wouldn't either, mate.
But I mean, it was that was when I was about 10 or so. So it's just the name and the what he was like as a defender stuck out for me. Really, he was just a brilliant player, and it rightly so went on to have a very good career.
Well, he had a long career. I don't think he had the career he could have had. I mean, he did a bit of research for you. It's so unfair because I told you I was going to send you this over, and then I didn't get time. So he played 146 appearances. Show prep. 146 appearances for the club, 2 goals. He was Player of the Year in 1998, which was the year that we were promoted. So what we're talking about here is a footballer who had a major impact on a side that actually went on to some success. And as I was looking through the list earlier, it's surprising how many of the players, as we go down the list, didn't win a trophy, didn't win a promotion, but still managed to capture the players. Just to clear something up from earlier as well. My daddy's watching, so there we go. And just to get Sean in trouble, apparently my dad's jealous of Harry's hair. What I really remember, 2 things about Kevin Austin that really stick in my mind. One, there was the appeal for the fans to help bring him in. He was kind of like a modern day Peter Grotier. My dad always used to tell me about the fans got the money to bring in Peter Grotier, and I always I got on board with that. Here's a player who's so exciting, the fans wanted him. And the other thing about Austin that always stuck with me is he was an absolute monster. I'd been watching Lincoln from 1986, was my first game. And I remember thinking, I haven't seen a footballer that's built like this. I mean, he was, I think other managers now, they would call him a specimen, but he was just carved out. He was carved out of stone, man. He could have been on a plinth in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence by Michelangelo. That was how, do you know what I mean? And that always stuck with me. Had he not got injured, he moved to Barnsley, was injured in the Coca-Cola Cup, whatever it was, against us, never came back the same player. I will boldly say, and I will stand by this till the day I die, had he not got injured and he had kept going on to achieve his potential, he would have played top flight football. Absolutely no doubt whatsoever, in my opinion. And I concede that he was primarily a centre-back and not a left-back.
I remember having that conversation with you. So
yeah, I remember having Well, Pete, my mate Pete, I always have to call him my mate Pete, as if you don't know who Pete is, always drops it in on me. Always drops it in on me. If he's losing another argument, he goes, yeah, but Kevin Austin was a centre-back. Shall we do another one?
We shall indeed.
Like the Royal Rumble, isn't it? Who's coming in at 23? Alan Long, take it away.
Number 23, Graham Bressington.
Now, this is before your time, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Because he was Player of the Year in 1991, 141 appearances, 7 goals. He was what I would call an old school footballer. He was the previous breed. And if you listen to Under the Cosh now, I don't know if you ever listened to that podcast.
Yeah.
But it's always, they're always talking about players of yesteryear, and they're talking about the drinking culture, and they're talking about that sort of thing. And Graham Bressington was very, very much entrenched in that, but he was a very good player as well. He could pop up with goals. Scored the goal of the season. I think it was in 89-90 against Gillingham. We lost 3-1. And I remember that. Have I gone all funny?
It's not as crispy as it was. I can still hear you.
Okay, no worries. I'm not quite sure what the problem is there then. So I just felt Graham Bressington was one of my early heroes. I met him again in 2007, and he would basically his exact words were, "I'd kill my granny for a win on the pitch." Was what he said.
Wow.
So I've got somebody here. Malcolm Johnson clearly remembers him. The Glenn Hoddle of Division 4. Adam Ball remembers him. Bressy was a great player. Paul, our good friend Paul's on. He had thighs like oak trees. Yeah, but they weren't like Kevin Austin's, were they? Come on. And Danny Nez, Brest, top player on and off the field. Always had time for the fans. Old school. I desperately tried to get him for this. He has no social media profile. There's nobody called Bressington who lives anywhere around where he does. He lives down near some friends of mine in Wickham. So I've got to, just so people know, I'm pixelating. As long as you can still hear me, I've got a real problem with my internet connection at the moment. So, this is going to be as good as it gets, I'm afraid.
It wouldn't be a Stacey West podcast without technical issues, would it, Gaz?
No, but they're my fault this time.
See, I said before we started this, he said it was going to be difficult for him to be horrible to me because he can see me. And I said, yeah, you can see the pain. You can see the pain that it causes me. And, it'll cut me. It'll cut me deep. Anyway.
Should we do another?
Yeah, let's go for it.
At number 22, Alan Power.
Or just Power, according to the graphic.
He was the National League's Conor McGregor, wasn't he? Well, he thought he was. But no, I think the thing for me with Alan Power, I admittedly came quite late back into the National League era. But he was a player that immediately stood out to me when I started coming back. He had the confidence, he had the talent, and I think he had the rapport with fans as well that I think was quite important to people. He just always stood out. Obviously, at that level, he was a cracking player. And the moment for me that will stand out, forever really, was the penalty against Brighton. It was just the way that he stuck it. The way he stuck it away after having quite a long delay for the keeper going off, and then his Conor McGregor walk as well. It was it was something. There you go. That McGregor celebration. It was a moment that really it cemented everything for me for coming back.
Sam Ray says that Power gave everything. I think that's right. Just so other people know as well, Charlie Russell from the club, he is on board. He was complaining, saying Andrew Boyce should have been higher. So contact Charlie Russell at redimps.com to tell him why he shouldn't. No, Alan Power. Look, I was a massive Alan Power fan for the same reasons that Sam Ray said, in that he gave everything. And there was the season where I think it was under Simo. where there was clearly the team around him simply wasn't turning in the performances that they should have been. John Nolan, I think, was one that sticks in mind, who was a phenomenal footballer when he wanted to be, and when he wasn't, but he like sticking his bottom lip out. You never got that with Alan Power. I thought he had a really tough 16-17. He wasn't in Danny's plans. He had to force his way back in to some degree. The penalty against Brighton obviously sticks in my mind, but I just thought that season he helped us get over the line. And he's probably the best player we've ever had who will never play a Football League game for us, because when you look at the GMVC winning team, obviously there was quite a few of those came through to the Football League. Alan Power played the first kick of our National League season. He played the last kick of our National League stay, rather, and he never ever played Football League for us. Delighted that he moved up to Scotland. Delighted his career is going well for him. Yeah, and it looks to me like a few people agree.
Yeah, I was going to say he seems to be, carving out a decent career for himself north of the border now. He's been that sort of player. He like you say, leaves it on the pitch, and you can't really argue with that for anybody that plays. I think somebody said. Pete said, it's difficult to not love a player who rinses every last bit of talent. He's just fantastic. So,
do you know what? That's a good way to put it. He made the most of what he had, and I think that's the way to do it, and he still does it today. So, very good. He also made 261 appearances, scored 36 goals, and was Player of the Year in 2013.
There you go.
Do another. We're on course here. We've only got 3 more to do before half past. Knowing this. Now, this is a personal favourite of mine. Alan Long, who is it?
At 21, David Putnam.
I'm gonna have to let you wax. I'm gonna have to let you wax lyrical on this one, Gaz. I think it's another one that's slightly before me.
I had a very interesting discussion at dinner with Danny Cowley once, and that's not me name dropping. It was this sponsors dinner kind of thing. We'd won an auction, and we all went round to Dave's house, and we was having this dinner, and we were naming our best 11. And I named I'm getting mixed up now. David Putnam on the left wing. I'm forgetting all my names. Pete, his name is a good friend of mine. Pete, forget his name. He's that good a friend. But no, he was saying he's not fit to lace such and such his boots. He's absolutely rubbish. He's this and that. And do you know what? It always grabbed me about that how one person's excellent kind of hero can be somebody else's crap. And I would like to think that I am in the right, because Sean Simons agrees with me. He said he was a wizard. I really liked Putz, Player of the Year in 1993, 204 appearances, 22 goals. He was an out-and-out winger in an era where we didn't tend to have very many, or certainly not very many that stuck out. And when you've been forced to watch the likes of Steve Mardenborough on the wing, Dave Johnson to a degree, Magic Johnson was, in my opinion, average, but Putnam he was one of those that when he turned up, he turned up. Do you know what I mean? He was absolutely superb. And I think when we got rid of him, he went to Gillingham, which was a real shame. And I think it was Steve Wicks got rid of him and Dean West, which I would never forgive him for. So just quickly, though, Ben, Shane Wakefield's got a question for you.
I have seen this question.
Yes. Any chance you could answer that at all?
No, I'm not drinking my own urine. I'm drinking Winter Jack and lemonade. Winter Jack is a Jack Daniels sort of themed drink. It's very nice.
So is it alcoholic?
Yes.
So you're on the beer?
Yeah, pretty much.
I wish I was. I only brought bloody Fanta in. I could have brought a can of IPA. I thought about it. Malcolm Johnson's David Putnam was a proper left winger. He was a proper left winger. Kev Barwise scored one of the best volleys away at Preston on the opening day of '95 that I've ever seen by an Imps player. We beat Preston 2-1 that day, and it was the same year that we had 3 managers. I think Sam Ellis was in charge that day, and we ended up sacking him. Steve Wicks came in, sold David Putnam and Dean West, and I think it was Putnam and West that scored on that day at Preston as well. So there we go. Okay. That's David Putnam. To another one that Ben might struggle to talk about in a Lincoln shirt, but not in another shirt. Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Long.
At number 20, Darren Huckerby.
Now, interesting fact, Darren Huckerby has the fewest appearances of anybody in the top 25. Just 31 times he appeared for Lincoln.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the thing is, for me, Huckerby's legacy really is when he left, and Newcastle came to Sincilbank and Shearer made his debut. There was all the talk beforehand about him, keeping him down to 1 hat-trick instead of 3, and he only scored 1 on the night, and that was from the spot. So, he's a player that obviously there is an affection for him, and for good reason from what he went on to do. But as a Lincoln City player, like you say, it's one that I would probably struggle to recall all that much.
I remember seeing him play a little bit. I didn't get to every game at the time. I know that he was one that when he came out of the academy, there was lots and lots of excitement about him. I know he scored away, I think, on his debut. Or he did, yeah, there we go. Debut away at Shrewsbury. That's from Steve Rowland. Came on and scored. Exciting player to watch. He lived with Keegan for a short period when he went to Newcastle. I think he did. I think when you read Huckerby's book, which is really good, he says that I think he lived with Keegan. He was also, when you read his book, very confident. He believed in his talent, and he believed that he had every right to be playing not just in the senior team at Lincoln, but also in the senior team at Newcastle, Coventry, Man City, wherever he went on to play. I think that his legacy was more about the fact that he went for a huge chunk of money. I think if you look at the numbers, and I might have my timelines wrong here, but I seem to think that the Huckerby money ended up helping us bring in possibly not Ainsworth, but possibly Gavin Gordon, something like that. So the money was certainly invested back in the side, and kind of it was the summer of '96, wasn't it? I think we'd already signed Ainsworth.
Yeah, I seem to recall it being Gordon, but I might be wrong.
I think it was Gavin Gordon. Now, to be honest, I did see it at one point while I was double checking my facts, and I haven't written it down on my second screen, which is my godsend at the moment. But he's probably one of our most famous sons in terms of coming out of the youth academy. And I think even when you look at some of the other players that have come out of our academy, in Lee Frecklington, things like that, very few went on to play very, very regular centre forwards, very regular top flight football. So very interesting. Just as a word, we do have 2 guests coming on tonight as well. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be talking about players that are before both mine and Ben's time. We've got Dave and Mark. They are both in the green room waiting. I can see them. They can see me, but they can't be heard or seen. Give us a wave, Dave and Mark. Dave's giving me a wave. Mark's just setting himself back up. There he is. We've got a wave as well. So they're in. They're going to be talking about players from their time.
I mean, I can't see that. So that is exclusively for you, Gaz.
Yeah. What comments have we got? Kate says it's unusual that there's no talk of XG today.
I can tell you that our XG on Saturday was 2.54.
Well, yeah, it's because you've read my article today. It's unlike you, Ben, getting your information from one of my articles. Should we do another one? Because we were meant to get this one done before past. So if we get this one in, we're going to be on time.
We're on track, mate. We're on track.
So, ladies and gentlemen, prepared to get frothing at the mouth, because the 19 best player of a generation, according to Stacey West fans, is
number 19, Paul Farman.
I'll let you take it first.
I mean, thing is, like, Farms was obviously the keeper when I sort of came back to the club, and for me, he was that character. More than anything else, Farms is a great character. He's that kind of player that will stay in the mind as as the lad that got on, stood on everybody's shoulders when we went up and led the whole stand, the whole stadium in singing. He was the guy that went out on the on the lash after we got promoted and was filmed in a toilet with a wet floor sign, clapping it, and nothing like that. Yeah, he was the one that clapping the sign and singing Free From Desire, all the rest of it. And he was just there for a very long time, and I think he was unfairly vilified towards the end of his reign.
By some, not by all. By some.
Yes, by some. I think he was, unfairly criticised by by a lot of people. I think, particularly when it came to maybe a bad run of form, I think he took the brunt of a lot of the blame when really it was unfairly levied at his door. And I think the fact that he's gone on to be as revered by the fans at Stevenage as he was at Lincoln, I think it proves that, he, while not necessarily the best keeper that we've ever had, he is definitely one of the best characters that we've ever had in the club. And I think it's being proven the more that he goes on.
Yeah, before I go on, just to pick up, Sean says he was a great servant to the club, England's #1, which I think we might hear that again before the end of the show. D. Hubbard says he had a great sense of humour. Sam Ray, Farms always had time for the fans. Again, that's really important. And I think that's one of the reasons why we saw Bradley Wood appear was that kind of link with the fans. And Bubs obviously loved him because he was a jewel. I think
he was the only one that could understand him.
I think how approachable Farms was really important. My partner and I had a bit of a laugh because the first game she ever came to, she who's the ball, because he was skinhead at the time, who's the keeper, and having a laugh, and she bought a fridge magnet and kind of had this faux crush on Paul Farman. And I remember messaging him on Twitter at Christmas and saying, can you do you want to wish my partner happy Christmas? And that was it. He was straight on it, and I liked that. But look, let's take away from that. 2016-17 was a title-winning season. It was a season Lincoln City put themselves on the map. We won a trophy. We got to the FA Cup quarter-final. We got to the FA Trophy semi-final. We did all of that with Paul Farman in goal. He was outstanding that season. Look at that performance at Arsenal. Man of the match, despite us getting beaten 5-0.
Yeah.
Take it back from that. When you think about when Nick Townsend came in and Farms was pushed out on loan to Boston, what did he do? He bounced back. He came back. He was Player of the Year in 2015. He showed character, and he always used to tell me all he ever wanted to do was play for the Football League. He wanted to do it with Lincoln if he could. I think he appeared for us in the Football League, but not too many times. Hang on, here we go. Thought she was upstairs doing the ironing. Apparently, she's watching it. But for me, I loved the guy, and I think he's keeping goal now at Carlisle, doing well. He's living his dream. That's his dream, was Football League. He knew, the level that he was at, and fair play to him. And just to finish on that, Dean Wagstaff says he was a top role model for my lad.
Absolutely.
Phenomenal. So Paul Farman, I think we've heard quite a bit now on him. Let's move on to what number we're on, number 18. Here's one for, I don't even think it's just a generation, this one. I think number 18 spans a generation, because as Alan Long will tell you, it is.
At number 18, Grant Brown.
And before we have a conversation, we've actually got two videos from Grant, but we're going to play one of them now and then one of them when he talks about another player later on. So, ladies and gentlemen.
I am delighted to be here with yet another Lincoln City legend. I seem to be making a habit of it on this show. Our record appearance holder, Mr. Grant Brown. Congratulations, Grant, on placing in the top 25.
Thank you very much, Gary. It's a great honour, great privilege to be recognised by the fans and to be in the top 25 over so many different eras that we've had at the football club, and particularly with the great success we've had in recent times. Is obviously fresh in people's memory the success we've had of late. It's nice for some to remember back a little bit longer and recall themselves. So very proud and very honoured.
Wonderful. That with so many appearances for the club, you played through quite a few eras. Which kind of era stands out for you, or which couple of eras stand out for you, and why?
Yeah. Obviously, the first bit with Murph was a great time, a great learning experience for me. Some great players, not great players, but great teamwork, great camaraderie, which was one of Murph's favourite sayings. I really enjoyed working under Steve Thompson. Maybe it's because he was a centre half, and as well that I really took to Tomo, and obviously Becky, John Beck. We had success with Becky. he did a lot of the groundwork for the promotion that Shane saw us through to, and he was good to work with as well, Shane Wesley. So yeah, good times, good eras to play in. Different eras to now. The game's changed massively since then, but it was an enjoyable time.
Wonderful. You mentioned there are a couple of central defenders that you played with. Of the top 25, I think it's just 5 central defenders have been voted in. Do you think it's a tougher position to have to try and impress fans rather than the fancy Dan winger and the goal scorer?
Yeah, I think very much. I think it's everybody loves a goal scorer. Everybody loves a winger that goes past players and entertains. But you can't do that. If you haven't got defenders in to stop them scoring, you're not going to win football matches. So whilst they're not glory hunters, but they always get recognised as for their achievements in scoring goals and creating goals. Most of the times, teams that win things concede the least amount of goals. So I think it's a vitally important position, and it's when you come to defenders, it's you relying on your central defenders to keep the ball out and to organise things, and the fact that there's 5 in there is probably it shows that the fans know what they're talking about. I'm sure there's a lot of places that would be just all centre forwards and wingers and flair players. So it's good that the fans recognise the job that central defenders do.
I think before we go on, we've got quite a lot of reaction coming in for Grant. Danny Nez says Grant is a true imp. Pete Steele, let's not forget all the work with the youth during the lean years. Hubs loved Grant. Kev Barwise talked about his screamer away at Chesterfield, 40 yards or probably more. Lots and lots of people with oof. We've also got Sean with Mr. Lincoln City. Your appearance stats there on the video actually did him a disservice because I believe he played 469 games for Lincoln, not 407.
Well, I blame Wikipedia.
I think Wikipedia do league appearance.
Subs is in brackets, probably, isn't it?
Yeah,
I forgot to add the 2 up.
League as well. Doesn't matter anyway. At the end of the day, look, I mean, I spoke to Grant literally minutes before the Plymouth game, before I went live on Matchday Live, and I rushed the interview through a little bit. I mean, we've got him talking about other players in a little while, and then at the end he was like, "Oh yeah, how you doing?" I said, "Oh, Matchday Live, I'm on in 3 minutes," and he actually sounded disappointed because he actually said, "Oh, I won't talk to you anymore."
Yeah.
I get the feeling, I want to talk to Grant about the Lincoln City because he will have stories that span David Putnam, Graham Bressington, right the way through to Alan Marriott, Pete again. And for me, they're 2 separate eras, but this man defines an entire era. He's 100% a Lincoln City legend. Let's not just talk about his longevity, though. I mean, he was a good central defender. You had to be to play that many games without being kicked out the door. He was dependable. He was reliable. He was like a Steve Thompson defender. No nonsense. Tackle when you need to, head it away, kick it away. You wouldn't have got him particularly doing a Lewis Monsma unless there was really space and time.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think, as Pete says here, there's a whole podcast talking to Grant. It might be in the pipeline. Let's just say that much. Might be in the pipeline. I mean, Ben.
I don't really think there's a whole lot more that we can say other than that, to be honest. It was... he is Mr. Lincoln City, in terms of a player. He is Lincoln City. Like he's got that appearance record. He, as Pete mentioned, he was the player that stepped up into the coaching level when we were in the lean years. I think at one point he was even assistant manager. He took on board so much from the club, and gave back to the club as well. Like he's just been such a phenomenal servant, both as a player and as a manager, or as a member of staff within the club. And I think the fact that to this day he still does bits for the club is it just says it all, really. And I think that there was one thing that I think when we were fortunate enough to get invited along to the Battle of Britain Memorial flight not long ago. About a year ago now, I think it was actually. But it was, there were players there. Grant was there, Harry Toffolo was there, Roger Bates was there, and the media team were there. We were able to just mix and chat with them all day. And Grant, he was just talking about anything and everything. Just a fantastic guy to have a chat with, and I would absolutely love to get a whole podcast with Grant at some point.
Because I want to talk to him about Joe Allen's piles. Anyway,
okay.
Honestly, there's a thing
before we go anywhere, I just want to show one thing. This is the photo that I said would never see the light of day, and given that this is a very special podcast, there is me
and Ben.
That is me and a young
curtains there.
Just look at that hair.
I think I had curtains like that, although mine were ginger, so mine were probably off-putting for girls. Before we carry on, because we are about to welcome in one of our guests shortly. So but before we carry on, Paul Norton says, before the end, get the trumpet out. Now, at that point, I was a little bit concerned. Get the trumpet out and play Poacher's Tune. I hope Rachel's prepared for that. Let's get Gary dancing again. If Ben gets his trumpet out, you'll get me closing the browser, Paul. That's what's going to happen there. But Rachel says Ben hasn't changed his hair in 30 years. He hasn't cut his hair in 30 years by the looks of things, Rachel.
That's fair.
Shall we have another one? I can see Mark limbering up. I can see him limbering up off camera, ready to come on. So if we're getting a guest on, that means we're getting a player from another era. Alan Long, who are we getting?
And number 17, Mick Harford.
Now, I'm not sure if that was Mick Harford in that picture, but I'm sure it was. Just before we bring Mark in, Mick Harford is one of the two reasons I think I ended up supporting Lincoln, because my granddad's budgie was taught to say Mick Harford, and he used to say Mick Harford, which we, as kids, if a pet can talk, you listen. And so I ended up becoming a Lincoln fan. And it's also why I supported Luton for a while, because Dad said, if you support Lincoln, you'll get picked on. I've told this story loads of times, so I won't tell it anymore. But to talk about Mick Harford and tell us all about his 126 appearances, 46 goals, 3 years in a row as top scorer, let's bring in Mark. Mark, how are you doing, mate?
Good, thank you. I'm not sure about the introduction. These players before your time makes me feel very old.
Made me feel old when Ben said he couldn't remember growing Bressington. Oh no, I can't be an old man. So Mick Harford, I mean, for those, there'll be a lot of younger people watching who probably didn't get to see him play. What sort of centre forward was he?
So I mean, he was a proper centre forward. I mean, we've had some great number 9s over the years, but I think you'd have to say not many went on to play for England, which Mick did. I think he had 2 caps possibly when he was at Luton. So I remember this because he arrived sort of about 77, so it was just after the sort of Graham Taylor era. Things were on a bit of a downward spiral, and he was a real kind of shining star. I'm amazed he was only at the club for, I think, 3 years, I read, which surprised me. So in terms of type of player, I mean, he was quite a sort of a slightly built bloke, but goodness me, was he strong. Phenomenal in the air, held the ball up superbly. I texted a few mates today about telling them about this, and one of them, who's not a Lincoln fan, said one word about Mick Harford: scary. And I think that just about captures it, because he could properly look after himself. Excellent with his back to goal, but left a fair few centre halves in a crumpled heap as well.
I mean, when you look back over his goals, I mean, he was top scorer in 77, 78 with 9, and 78, 79 with 6. Yeah. So I mean, he was a good player in a struggling side.
Struggling team, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And in 79, 80, I think he hit 16, and I may be wrong, but was that a promotion year, or was it 80?
Yeah, so this surprised me. So in my mind, I had him as part of Murph's teams that pushed hard in the 3rd division, but he'd gone by then. That promotion year you talk about, Gary, I think that was his last year. And I do remember, how old had I been at the time? Sort of 16, 17 years old, so a bit more in the know about what was happening. And there was scouts watching him week after week. So there was kind of inevitability about him leaving. I think we sold him to Newcastle for 180,000, which must have been a fortune for Lincoln in those days. But yeah, as you say, a top player in a struggling team. And then, I mean, his career after Lincoln tells its own story, really. Including apparently Fergie tried to buy him for United right towards the end of his career, which is something I'd never picked up on. So yeah, a really, really good player. fantastic player, and as I say, back to goal, header of the ball, second to none.
And I've got here Dave Roberts says he was a hard man.
Yeah,
I think that's just about sums him up. Listen, Mark, thank you so much, mate. We'll get you back again shortly because there's another one coming up very soon for you to talk about. But for now, we shall slide you back into the green room. Thank
cheers,
you.
guys.
I think we've got Pete Summers says Fergie did try to sign him to replace Mark Hughes. Obviously, Mick Harford later played for Chelsea, I think, as well. Played against Israel for England. I remember watching it, thinking that he was one of Lincoln's own. So, do you know what? I think it's time for another one, don't you?
Yeah, let's go for it.
I tell you what, I ought to take that off. Oops. That happened. The Stacey West podcast, top class production, ladies and gentlemen. 130 people watching at the moment, by the way. Thank you so much, everybody. Alan Long, who's number 16?
Number 16, Jamie Forrester.
Mr. Forrester. Now, I know Kate obviously said, hoped that Jamie would be top. I'm pleased to see him on the top 25. I'll let you start, Ben.
100%. I think Forrester was, during those years that he was with the club, I think he was possibly, he was probably my favourite striker. He had it all. He had the knowledge, he had the intelligence, the awareness, and he had just a lethal finish on him. And I think obviously the fact that he had that hat trick of hat tricks in that season. I think they actually came before October, if I remember rightly. So he was that kind of player that was just so on it. And I think whenever if the ball got near him, you'd think, oh, that's it. He's gonna grab a goal here. And I think he was just a proper, if you'll excuse the fact that I'm using the term in front of yourself, he was a proper poacher. Really was just a great striker.
I think Keith Alexander's time and manager was defined by two things, in my opinion. One, revitalization and the playoffs, and two, his seemingly everlasting search for a striker. I've never known a manager bring so many strikers to a club. And when you talk about Yeo, you talk about Cropper, Ellis, Remy, Rory May, Danny Bacon, Shane Bradley, Chris Ward, Marcus Richardson, Francis Green, Gary Taylor. You could go on and on and on. And I would say that there's probably 20 or 30 strikers, AD Mike, Martin Carruthers, that Keith Alexander tried and didn't entirely either settle with or was forced to sell, and with Yeo buyback and that sort of thing. Keith left us not long after Jamie came to the club. He came when we beat Grimsby 5-0. That was his first game. Keith left after the playoffs at Grimsby later on. I think Keith found the striker that he needed, because I think he found a striker who was of an age where he would have stayed at the club until the end of his career had we wanted him. He was a clever striker. He could play off a big man. He wasn't particularly quick. He was quick enough, but he had adapted his game by that point so that he didn't need to be 10 yards quick, because he had already got 3 yards in his head with his movement and his positioning. And he was, in my opinion, he was one of the best strikers that we had during Keith's era in terms of the way he viewed the game. And that's no disrespect to the likes of Simon Yeo, who was, he was quick and he played the game with this kind of enthusiasm and it was a million miles an hour. Jamie Forrester, it was like chess. He already knew if you moved to D4, he was going to E3. He was 8-9 moves ahead. He was phenomenal. We talk about the hat trick of hat tricks. I remember the one away at Mansfield Town. It was a phenomenal away day. And he was just unplayable, more so with Mark Stallard, because Stallard was the perfect accompaniment, because he was big, he was strong, but he could play as well. He had that footballer's brain as well. And I think
Mark Stallard was also flipping hard, Gary.
He was apparently flipping hard. But Forrester, for me, was just how Peter Jackson let him go, because I think he scored, he was top scorer in 2006-07 with 18, but I think he scored 13 the next season. I think Ben Wright may have outscored him. And then Jacko released him and he went to Notts County, and he had a good season at Notts County as well. And for me, I think he should have stayed until the end of his career. Couple of people here saying Kev Barwise, for instance, unplayable in those first 6 months under Scully. I think he was unplayable all the way through the season. It was the rest of the team that weren't. Kate, my choice, the most intelligent striker I've seen at the club. Yeah, I mean, again, summed up what I've said. Could score, set up others, gent off the pitch, best all-rounder we've had. Stuart Coulter, welcome to the show. He was a gem of a striker. Sid Army's on, great footballing head, that hat-trick versus Barnet away, the goals away at Mansfield, top goals and Stallards, rip sides apart. And Pete calls him Lincoln's Teddy Sheringham. So thus far, I've seen Pete mention Alex Ferguson, Teddy Sheringham and Eric Cantona. Maybe you and Ben should get a room. And we've said we're not going to swear, so you can't.
I know, that's the annoying thing.
Can't say it, can you?
Go on then, let's move to the next one.
Yeah, no worries. Let's have a look. So we are on. I know why you want this one to come. I've just seen the private chat as well. So for now, we're just going to say goodbye to Ben for a second, ladies and gentlemen. Alan Long, who comes in at number 15?
At number 15, Dave Smith.
Now, I'm going to bring Mark straight back in for this. Mark, Dave Smith, a man who I have been told so many stories about from my dad, from Malcolm Johnson. How much of a legend was he for the club?
Yeah, so I think I saw my first game at Sincil Bank in about 70, 71, and he'd have been playing then. And he was just never present, really. I mean, I can't remember going to a Lincoln game any time through the 70s that he wasn't part of the side. And he was a bit, particularly in the early 70s, kind of footballers tend to look a bit like your dad. They'd all got short back and sides and shirt tucked in the shorts and all the rest of it. And Dave Smith had a bit of the kind of lower division Georgie Best about him, you know, slightly longer hair, the droopy tash. And he was a dribbler. He was a proper old-fashioned winger. So not a kind of a Huckerby flying machine or even a Harry Anderson, but a real old-fashioned natural dribbler with the ball, loved to get it down, beat fullbacks, put crosses in. He just had that little bit of star quality, I guess you'd say, really. It's a time when it wasn't easy being that sort of player. And of course, he was pretty much never present in Graham Taylor's Division 4 title winning side. Think he might have missed one or two games from what I read about him. Very good technical footballer, left-sided. Loved him to bits. Pretty much a one-club man. I think he went out to Rotherham at the end of his career, but other than that, I think he was 10 years at Lincoln. So a fantastic player.
See, I find that quite interesting as well, that longevity, because I think when you look at the likes of Graham Brown, that kind of appeals to fans as well.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that might have been tougher probably in the 70s to keep going for so long with kind of with injuries often ruling you out for or ending careers that now you could play on with?
Well, I guess so. And I mean, I always think about the quality of the surfaces these guys played on. I mean, Sincil Bank was like a quagmire through the winter months and like the sort of Sahara Desert in the sort of last few weeks of the season. And I mean, some of the tackling that went on in those days, games would be 5-a-sides now. So for somebody like him to play the amount of games, I think it was 370 odd games over 10 years. I mean, that's some amount of games. And I don't recall him being missing through injury that often. Difficult. He was always an ever present. It's funny because in Taylor's sides, there was a lot of power. You know, Sam Ellis, centre forward, we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But there's a lot of good technical footballers, like Alan Harding, John Fleming, and Dave Smith was like that. You know, very good technical footballer. He used the ball well, very comfortable with the ball at his feet. Top player.
Smashing. Thank you, Mark. We will touch. We'll come back to you in just a second, but if I can get my mouse to work. Which I can't. We'll say goodbye for now. Thank you. I'll bring Ben back in. I know everything's going wrong right now, my mouse as well. So just to echo kind of what Mark said there, when he rolled his socks down, you knew he meant business. Kit Topin says Smith had swag, rock solid. Dave Roberts, my hero, good friend, came to my wedding, should be in the top 10. In an all-time legends vote, Dave, he almost certainly would be, without a doubt, 100%. I think. Kev Barwise, he was Lincoln's maverick alongside Robin Friday and Stan Bowles, brilliant footballer and top bloke. You know who Robin Friday is, Ben?
No.
I'll lend you a book. Greatest footballer you never saw.
I mean, according to you, I won't read it. So
Malcolm Johnson, Smithy could get stuck into. So that's Dave Smith, absolutely fantastic player that I never saw. I wish I'd seen him play for Lincoln City, but we're going to move on now to another one. And Alan Long, I know he's going to get Ben incredibly excited now.
At number 14, Harry Toffolo.
Oh, cuts off quite quickly. Now, we weren't scheduled to have Dave Wilkinson in just yet, but I know that he wants to talk about Harry as well. So I'll give you a 2-minute warning, Dave. We'll have a couple of, we'll have a few lines from you before, after myself and Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to Toff, there's no better way to endear yourself to fans than to score on your home debut, and when that home debut is against your former club, it's always quite important and quite special. And I think really it kind of went from there onwards, and Toff just sort of grew as the team, as the team progressed. Where's the cardboard cut out? I have had a text from today, actually. He's watching, so all right, Harry. Yeah, it's one of those things that he grew as the season went on. And obviously, stayed with us for 2 seasons, was never present in that first season. And I think that first season he took a place in the team of the season for League Two as well. So the fact is that, for me, he was that kind of player that we needed at left back. He wasn't afraid to get up the pitch, as well as, put a decent challenge in at the back. And ultimately, I've not just had a moment. No, sod off. It was the fact as well that part of it in the modern era, at least for me, the players that strike a chord with me are the ones that make that impact off the field as well. And in terms of, off the field stuff, Harry Toffolo is just, he is the top man for that. I think he is, and yeah, as Jake said there, Toff's a hero. Feel so proud watching him excel in the Championship. Couldn't happen to a nicer bloke. And I just think he is that kind of guy that, he would be the first in the queue for going to chat to, people outside of the club and, on an ambassador role. He was the first one to say yes to coming on the podcast with us, when we did it live. There was, a friend of mine, their child got injured, and I tried to arrange something with the fans, and Toff was straight away just like, yes, not a problem. And I think it's helped in the era that we're in now, with social media being kind of as prevalent as it is, because Toff's used it to his full advantage. And yeah, just top bloke, and I'm really, really pleased to see him this high up in the list. I've finished now, Gary. You can carry on.
I can say something about Toff, can I? Am I allowed to? I didn't know if I was allowed to. I didn't know if you'd start getting well gel. All I would have to say, all I have to say about Toff is...
Sorry, I've just seen Chris Keneally's comment.
Ben and Toff, a better love story than Twilight. What's Twilight? I thought that said Twiglet for a minute.
Yeah, Twiglet. It's the vampire movies.
Yeah, I don't watch those. All I say about Toff before I bring Dave in, I take everything that you say about him being off the pitch. He's a cracking bloke. He was obviously at the Battle of Britain thing with us. He was just down to earth and approachable. But on the field, he was a bloody good player. Better in at the beginning of last season. I think he came on in leaps and bounds. I think, he was a great attacking player. I remember a friend of mine, I think it was either Sean Simons or Neil Carlton, having a pop at somebody at Rotherham away, because this guy was saying Toff never blocks a cross. It's like, Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? Give the lad a break. He's let one cross in. I thought defensively he improved. I thought going forward he was a real threat. Dave Wilkinson, what are your thoughts, my friend?
Yes, thank you, Gary. Evening. I took some criticism on Facebook recently, because I said that I think Harry Toffolo is the best player Lincoln have had in my time watching, and I go back to 1964. The fella, to me, he's just come on leaps and leaps and bounds. And as you say, the dog's come in now.
It's not Charlie.
and as you say, he's so good off the pitch as well. I wasn't at all surprised to hear you say that he was at the Bomber Command thing that you went to. Every time I've been to any function away from match days, during his time at the club, Harry's been there. brilliant, really nice bloke. Couldn't happen to a nicer fella, and I fully expect to see him in the Premiership before he's done.
Wonderful.
I really do rate him that highly.
That's high praise. Thank you, Dave. I'll drop you out again now. We will be speaking to you a little bit later on, but for now, you can pet the dog, and we'll come back to you shortly. Is it a Stacey West podcast if there isn't a dog on at some point? Right, we're getting a tiny bit nearly behind time at the moment, and we've got a video for this next one. So, Alan Long, why don't you tell us who's at number 13? One of my heroes.
At number 13, Alan Marriott.
I'm delighted to see Mazza here because he's a top bloke. Let's hear from him.
Right, so I'm here with number 13 on our list, Alan Marriott, record appearance holder, I think, for a goalkeeper. First of all, congratulations on being voted in the 13th, mate. How does it feel?
Thank you very much. Obviously, it's a massive honour. You look back at the history the football club's had throughout the amount of people there and all the amount of time I was there with some fantastic players. So to come at that figure, it's a great achievement and something to be very proud of.
Wonderful. And obviously you worked at the club for quite a long while, but you worked under Keith Alexander, which is probably the period that you enjoyed the most success. What was it like working under Keith and seeing that squad develop?
Keith was fantastic. I mean, when I first went there, the club was sort of under new ownership with the chairman, John Reams, who was in charge, and they were going through a difficult time. And then we went to administration, and then sort of Keith took over, steadied the ship, and then signed quite a few players from the non-league, and everyone that was at the club did think, well, what's he doing? Does he know what he's doing? But obviously how it turned out, we all know how it turned out in the end, and it was fantastic. And I think he played a big part of the club being where it is now, to be fair, to turn it around and financially get the club back going again, and had some good success, although we never crossed the line and got the promotion that we probably deserved. It was some fantastic times and some great memories.
Wonderful. And are there any memories that stand out for you in particular?
There'd be quite a few, to be fair. I mean, the biggest one for me was probably the 2 games over Scunthorpe in the playoffs. Was after the first leg, I think it was 5-3 on a horrible pitch, and the way that they come back into the game, and then we turned it around. And then obviously the second leg at their place with Simon Yeo scoring, and then doing his dambuster celebration in front of the fans. It was that was a right night to remember, to be honest with you. It's probably one that will stick long in the mind for a long time.
And obviously you've mentioned Simon there. He's likely to feature at some point in the top 25. But who do you think the best players were that you played with at the club, and why?
There's a wide variety over the sort of the 9.5 years I was there. Peter Game was a fantastic player when I was there. Gary Taylor-Fletcher was a different type of player to what we'd had, and a bit raw, and he's got some fantastic goals in his time. And obviously had Gareth McAuley come through, and Paul Morgan, who was a mainstay at the back as well as a captain. So there's a few sort of from that period. And obviously Lee Frackington come through as well, and obviously went on to a fantastic career. So it's hard to sort of narrow it down, but they'd probably be my 5 or 6 that my time there were top draw.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, and congratulations again.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Now, I got a little bit starstruck when I spoke to Mazza because the 2002, 2003 through maybe to 4 or 5 was kind of was a golden era, I think. And I was poacher, but I never really got around the players. I didn't do that kind of pushing myself in there. So it was the first time I've ever really spoken to Mazza. Still my favourite goalkeeper from my time from his time at Lincoln. Actually, I think 395 appearances in total. He broke Dan McPhail's record for clean sheets. And just as Kate said, that's not Kate. No, Kate, we couldn't. As Kate said, his criminal Mazza never played higher up in the Football League. He is. I mean, you saw the save as he was talking about the game there against Scunthorpe. You saw the save, and he was phenomenal. And you always knew that if a player was going to go through one-on-one, there was a 50-50 chance it was going to be saved. And you don't get that with a lot of goalkeepers. Probably the only thing, and again, somebody else, Marriott, Jake Bramwell says Marriott could have played at a higher level when he was at his peak. He could have done. He was the best keeper in the league by a long, long way. I think he didn't get in the PFA Keeper of the Year either, and he certainly should have done. I'll pass it over to you in a second, but just to address this, changed my shirt more times than Ben has my new shirts, and costume change. I'm actually changing into the shirts of the video that we're showing from the player that was playing. So, to explain that, I didn't have a Mazza goalkeeper shirt though. So, Ben, Mazza.
No, I mean, I can't help but agree with you. In terms of Marriott, I think he could have and should have played at a much higher level. I think a lot of people probably saw him and thought, well, he's not the tallest keeper in the world, but it never made a difference. His talent made up for it. I think, like you were saying, you got a bit starstruck talking to him. I think I got very starstruck a few years back because he now works. I think he's a Sparky now, and he came into our office. And was fixing some aircon, and basically loads of people came in and they just sat opposite him as he's starting to fiddle about with the aircon, and just went, "You're Alan Marriott." He's like, "Yes."
You worked with a good bunch.
No, that was me.
Yeah, you could have asked him some questions, and you didn't have to treat him like a circus sideshow.
But no, honestly, he was just a fantastic lad. And again, I think he was the kind of player that would keep his head down, away from, didn't get himself into trouble. And for me, the outstanding memory, and I'm so glad I found a clip of it for the video that we put together, was the failed Panenka against Torquay, when the guy chips it and he starts to go that way, just grabs it out of the air and then just goes over to him, just starts wagging his finger at him. Just perfect. And yeah, phenomenal keeper, absolutely phenomenal.
If you look carefully, and I'll have to watch the thing back, but I'm actually just behind the goal in like a cream Ben Sherman shirt, and maybe even this top, shouting as many obscenities I could. I can't think who the striker was. I can't think who missed it. So look, so we are 6 minutes running over at the. So should we go to number 12?
Go for it.
Have we got any more comments first of all?
Yes, we do.
Well, I think that's a good one. Mazza was quality. I wasn't going to put that one up, but I will do. Gary changed his shirt more than Ben complained about his TV. I haven't got enough shirts, mate, for that, I'm afraid. Alan Long, who's number 12?
At number 12, Gary Taylor-Fletcher.
Gary Taylor-Fletcher. We're talking about Player of the Year in 2004, 93 appearances, 29 goals, and I doubt any of them were tap-ins. I think he holds a joint record for the most amount of goals scored at the beginning of a season. I think he scored in 6 or 7 games on the bounce. Sublime talent, clearly evident by the fact he went on to play Premier League football. Key part of I mean, you wouldn't call Keith's team the crazy gang, but he was a key part of kind of that
era
spirit that we had. The year we went to the playoffs and played Huddersfield and was beaten, I actually think the team that played that evening was the best Lincoln City team until recent years. I mean, we had Mark Bailey on one defensive flank, Kevin Ellison on the other. It was a phenomenal side. Taylor-Fletcher and Simon Yeo were forwards at that time, the like of which we hadn't seen. I also remember when he was playing old Gary Fletcher as well, when he first came in with Leyton Orient. I had a great story about Taylor-Fletcher. And I think it was in some program notes that I did. And apparently they were on the bus to go down. The team were going down to play Leyton Orient. And the bus was late, so they had to stop and eat services. And apparently they all got off the bus, and Keith Alexander said to them, go and get yourself some food, lads, and then come back to the bus. So they all went in, and they're coming back with their salad wraps from W.H. Smith's and their sandwiches. And Gary Taylor-Fletcher comes back with a Burger King and a Coke. And apparently Keith looked at him, and I can't recall the story, but I think he looked at him and said something like, "You'd better do well for me today, son." And he scored a goal, and I think we beat Leyton Orient 2-0. I think he scored an absolute wonder goal against his former club. And he had that in him. I just wish we'd seen it every week in a Lincoln shirt, because I think he would have scored more than 1 in 3 had he managed to play every week, had he managed to perform every week.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, it was he was the sort of quiet one compared to Simon Yeo. Like when you have that dynamic as a duo, you've got the one that gets the headlines and the one that and sort of takes the limelight in a way. And that's not to say anything, derogatory about Simon Yeo whatsoever, but it was that kind of, Yeo would get the headlines, but Fletch would keep getting the goals and he'd keep putting the assists in. I think there was that one with there was the goal against Grimsby when Fletch put the cross in for Yeo's volley. He didn't just score the goals, he made them as well. And let's not forget one of the I think it was that back heel. I can't remember who it was against. The keeper's coming out and Fletch just sort of back heels it over the top of the keeper into the net. Just fantastic player, absolutely fantastic player, and rightly went on to play in the Premier League.
We beat Scunthorpe 2-0 on Sky, and I'm sure he set Yeo up in the first minute and then scored a chip himself.
Yes, he did. Yeah, that's right.
So,
yeah.
Paul Norton, if it comes up, my memorable thing about Fletcher wasn't as an imp. Scored a goal for Blackpool live on TV just after Butch died. Shrugged all the players off to reel his message under the shirt. That was for Butch, you blue nose, or something like that. Stu Wells remembers that. Kate Jackson remembers that. It was against Cambridge, the back
That's
heel
it.
goal.
Yeah.
Sid is a big Gary Taylor-Fletcher fan, and there's also someone else had mentioned the Leyton Orient game as well. So, Gary Taylor-Fletcher, absolutely superb. So he's Player of the Year in 2004, top scorer in 2004 with 19 goals as well. So that's in 03-04 when I'm saying top scorer. So that was the Huddersfield season. One of the few on the list who didn't make 100 appearances or more as well. So I think that's a testament to a player's ability when he endures for so long, despite not particularly having the longevity. So, and if you get a chance to listen to his podcast on Under the Cosh, it was phenomenal. He talked about how he left Lincoln. And it was basically Keith let him go because he knew he could get a move to a bigger club and a higher level. Apparently, Gary Taylor-Fletcher was coming back to the club saying, "Am I going to get a new deal?" And Keith was kind of going, "No, just hold fire." And then he was contacted by Huddersfield. So fascinating stuff. And Roy Thompson, good friend Roy, was at Orient when he scored the wonder goal. Never realised it was fuelled by Burger King. This podcast should be fuelled by Burger King, but there isn't one in Louth. So there we go. That's Gary Taylor-Fletcher at number 12. Mark Taylor, we're going to hear from for the last time in a moment. He's going to tell us about number 11. Who is it, Alan?
At number 11, Percy Freeman.
Now, I know that there will be some fans frothing at the mouth now that Percy's not higher up. Bear in mind the demographic of voters. We're not saying that Percy Freeman is not one of the all-time legends. Of course, he's one of the all-time legends. But Mark, why don't you tell us why?
Well, you use the word legend, overused term, but for this fella, absolutely spot on. Just a wrecking ball of a centre forward, massive physique. You talk about massive thighs. Goodness me! I mean, he was a. Imagine Matt Rhead with about 3 times the mobility. I mean, he was a terrifying prospect. All power and aggression. A lot of penalty area goals with his head, as you'd expect, but he had a real shot on him as well. Had the distinction of being sold and bought back by Graham Taylor. So we sold him to Reading, I think in about 73, 72, something like that. Didn't work out for him. And then bought him back at a fraction of the cost. And then, of course, went on to be part of the 74-75 title winning side. He's a good parallel with Matt Rhead, really, because you just had this charisma. Fans loved him. Opposing supporters hated him, proper wind-up merchant. Always stories about him being cited in high street hostelries, possibly on a Thursday night and even on Friday nights. I'm sure they're not altogether true. They've grown in the telling, but I think he was probably another one who was more fond of the Burger King than the salad wrap. But yeah, phenomenal player. I think between him and John Ward, something like 54 goals in the title-winning side. I mean, just a phenomenal record. Great player.
And you say that he was sold and bought by Graham Taylor. I think was he brought in by Ron Gray as manager when he came first of all from Reading?
Yeah, probably because about 1970, so that would have been about, it was either that or the Bert Loxley era. Because he's a local lad who's from Newark, but for whatever reason slipped through the net when he was a kid. But and then apparently when he went to Reading, nearly quit the game. He was so disillusioned with it. And it was only through Graham Taylor bringing him back that he didn't walk away completely. So amazing character. You'll have seen footage, I'm sure, on YouTube of the game against Doncaster when they clinched the title. I think he scored 2 of the goals that day. And there's an interview on there with Graham Taylor who claims at the end of the game, Percy gave him a bear hug and cracked his rib doing it. Which kind of seems unlikely, but I guess, he would know, wouldn't he? And he did have the physique to do damage. So, yeah, it's probably true.
Wonderful. Just to clear it up as well, Malcolm, I knew was watching and would correct us. Bert Loxley signed Percy. So, look, Mark, it's the last person that you're going to speak about. So, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being involved. Please feel free to stick around in the green room if you want to. But it's been really good listening to you and hearing your recollection of the players. So, thank you very much.
Been a pleasure, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mark. See you.
So just a couple of comments from Percy. Kit, who Reedy wanted to grow and be like. D. Hubbard, the man who made me love football. Awesome Percy Freeman from Jason Reed. Stu Coulter, Big Purse, what a man. I mean, lots of stories about Percy from Stu Wells. Look, I hope that this isn't offensive, but Stu's a similar generation to myself and you, Ben, and we grew up. I've grown up on stories of Big Purse from my old man. So
100%. Yeah, when my dad was here, he would talk about Percy Freeman, and he'd always say, we need a striker like Percy Freeman. We need a player like Percy Freeman, and it was it's the kind of player that I wish I'd been able to see.
I've said that a couple of times about some players. Dave Smith was one. I'd love to have seen Dave Smith play for Lincoln. More so after hearing kind of, Mark's words about him and that Maverick. So I kind of love that Maverick. And I think there'll be a player in the top 10 that was kind of my Dave Smith in the Maverick that broke the mold, that you could identify with as that kind of young person. You look at him and you go, you're not like normal footballers, you're something different. So I'd love to have seen that. Luckily enough, you and I both got to see the next man on the list, Alan Long. Who is it?
At number 10, Gareth McAuley.
What a player. Just what a player. And I think part of it is... there is a part of it that's similar to what we said about Huckerby, is that this might be tinged by what he went on to do. But, I mean, I think this is where we're going to play the other clip from Grant.
I'd forgotten that, to be honest.
Do you want to play that now?
Yeah, of course. It's the clip. This is kind of a little production thing we didn't discuss, but I'm assuming the clip also has the discussion about some other players as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. So this is a clip from when Gary spoke to Grant Brown, and Grant sort of discusses other players in that area that he could see.
McAuley, but we'll end on McAuley. So this is Grant Brown on the best players that he played with at Lincoln, or a selection of them.
We were talking off air a minute ago about players that stand out for you, and it interested me. The list that you rattled off, because it's not always the obvious players either. Just talk us through a couple of the players that really impressed you, both during your time at Lincoln and after leaving the club.
Yeah, I mean, I first got there. One of the ones that really shone out for me was Shane Nicholson. Good teammate, great lad, but great left foot. He went on and went to Derby and then went on to West Brom and Chesterfield. And had a really good career, but he was a very, very good player. I think for a long time he was the youngest person to play for Lincoln City. So at 16 years and so many days, he was a excellent player. Another one, it would have gone on to bigger things if he hadn't got injured, was Tony Lormer. Worked tirelessly for the team and was a great goal scorer. As I say, if he hadn't done his cruciate knee ligament, then he'd have been, he'd have gone on to great things. The one that will surprise a few is Jason Lee. To have him in the team, the way we played at the time was quite direct, and he won his head, he won his battles for a young lad coming in. He scored enough goals as well, but he created chances and got us up the pitch. He was excellent. against him. I did play against him a few times later on, but I think he must have liked me because he never elbowed me. He elbowed most of the centre halves, but he must have been. He must have remembered our good times together. So he was great to play with, and probably from the just after my time would be Gareth McAuley. He was an absolute Rolls Royce of a centre half. Still in his last year there, he was just. I compare him to, people might laugh at me, but at the time, he was like watching Virgil van Dijk in the Premier League. Obviously, he's playing in League Two, so there is a big different, division gap. But he was outstanding that year. He just watching every time he saw play, he just looked too easy for me. He made one or two errors, but he was that good. He just covered in, got challenges in, and got the ball back. And he was outstanding. He was brilliant for the team. It's a great sign, a great acquisition by. I think he came under Keith's era, but I think Keith Oakes had gone across to Ireland to watch him play and came back with rave reviews of him. So, great scouting for that, great teamwork from them to get him on board. And he went on to have a fantastic career, played most of the time in the Premier League. So, great player, very good player.
Wonderful. Well, look, Grant, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast, and hopefully we might be able to get you on for a longer show sometime soon.
No problem, Gary. Nice talking to you. Take care, mate.
Bye.
Cheers.
Well, I mean, I think that more or less says everything about Gareth McAuley. I'm not going to add anything personally. Darren Lilly says Gareth McAuley was his childhood hero. Kev Barwise saw Big Mac Mark Aguero out the game at the Hawthorns. He was great at Lincoln, but brilliant after he left too. Kate, going to be controversial. That's unlike Kate. Didn't rate McAuley personally, but then at the bottom, he went on to play in the Premier League, so you can't argue with that. Scored in the European Championships for Northern Ireland. One of the, I would probably say, the only ex-Lincoln player to have scored in a major tournament, potentially. Somebody might correct me on that. So, Gareth McAuley, great find, went on to have a great career, top player, 21 minutes past 8, and we are 4 players away from 8:30. We may overrun a little, but we are overrunning at the moment. So let's go on to number 9. We are going to be talking about another one of my heroes here. Alan Long, who is it?
Number 9, Paul Morgan.
Now, have you noticed Alan's got more enthusiastic as we've gone through the 25? Just to say, I mean, Alan, God bless him. We were unable to kind of thrash a time together, so he recorded it on his voice thing on WhatsApp and sent it over to me. So it must have been incredibly tough. Look, Paul Morgan, a player, if I had time, I would have almost certainly pushed to get on here. Because we just heard Graham Brown call Gareth McAuley a Rolls Royce of a defender. In my mind, Paul Morgan was. He was always one pace ahead again, like Jamie Forrester in his mind. Defensively, he always tried to be one step ahead. I remember a couple of last-ditch tackles that he made, one in particular against Hull once. There was just, he came from nowhere and timed it to absolute perfection. Don't forget, he came to the club before we went into administration. He was one of the ones that stayed. So he came through that bad time into the good time, just rolled on. I mean, we're talking about Player of the Year in 2003. That was a big, big season for Lincoln City. And he was the Player of the Year in it. I just think Paul Morgan was excellent. Before I go to you, Ben, Paul Morgan, part of a defence that only conceded 37 in a 46-game season, captain and legend. Morgan, absolute cast, sweeping up in a class in a back 3. Stu Coulter, that's not Stu Coulter, that is You'll Never Beat Paul Morgan, which Peter Steele says the same. You'll never beat Paul Morgan.
No, absolutely not. He was, he was obviously the small man, wasn't he? You had, Futcher and McAuley either side, or Futcher and McComb, or whoever it was that would be playing there, and he was the one in the middle that was, the skipper. He was even though he was shorter than everybody else, he had that commanding presence, and he was just, as Steve's put it perfectly, he was the puppeteer. Like, he would be the one that was pulling the strings, and he would be the one that would be, leading the line at the back, and he did exactly what a captain needed to do. He was disciplined, he was strong, he was, like you say, every time that the ball came through, you would feel that players wouldn't get past him. Just a phenomenal player, and I think one of the things that we did as kids was, the season when he left, we bought him a bottle of Captain Morgan's rum because, Captain Morgan, he's disappearing. We bought him a bottle of rum to send him off, and it was fantastic player, and I think was in my top 5.
So when you were kids, you bought him rum. How did you do that?
Well, when I was 18, you know what I mean, or 17. That's a kid, isn't it?
Helgi's talking about the away game. What did that Torquay forward say to him? Now, I might be wrong. I know that game against Torquay where he was sent off, but wasn't it another year at Torquay where he scored one of the late goals? And I remember the commentator go, Lincoln City were 1-0 down 2 minutes ago. They're now 2-1 up. And I clipped it and had it as my ringtone. And they used to be in Jackson's on the counter. And all of a sudden from my pocket, Lincoln City were 1-0 down 2 minutes ago. Phenomenal. Look, Paul Morgan, absolute brilliant footballer. I'd love to have got him on here. I'd love to have got him on the pod. I think he put a picture of himself down at the ground the other day on Twitter.
Yeah, he did,
I believe he works in physiotherapy now or something like that at Accrington. He certainly did last time I knew. Lovely, down-to-earth bloke. Proper defender, great defender. He's in at number 9, and at number 8, this is one that we're also going to have a video for. A lot of people might have thought that we were talking top 3 for yet another Keith Alexander.
At number 8, Simon Yeo.
Now that's the best Alan Long. Let's just appreciate that again.
At number 8, Simon Yeo.
And you could just tell that Alan wanted to break out into Yeo.
But he probably would have woken up his entire family.
Yeah, exactly. Would have done. We've got a video for this somewhere. Ben conducted an interview. Yep, he did.
I did.
Ladies and gentlemen, Simon Yeo.
So I am here with Simon Yeo, voted in at number 8 on our top 100 players of a generation for the Stacey West podcast. Simon, how does that feel? And first off, I think you've got something to say as well. So I'll let you take over, man.
Thanks, Ben. Well, firstly, I'd like to dedicate this interview for a young lad who I've known for many years. His name's Conor Mack, and last week he sadly passed away. He played left back for North Reddish Workingmen's Football Club. So I just thought I'd doing this interview. I'd dedicate it to obviously him, his mum, his dad, and friends and family. Basically, that he will be sadly missed.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, man. But I mean, on the positive side of things, yes. How does that feel to have been put in that high regard by the Imps fans that have voted for you?
Hey, I can't believe it, to be fair. Like I said, I'm still a bit shocked. But, when you hear stuff like that I've been voted 8th in, the fans vote, I can't believe it, to be honest.
I mean, what sort of, what big memories have you got from around that time? Obviously, I think one that sticks in a lot of people's minds will probably be the Scunthorpe games. But I mean, for yourself, what about you?
There's loads. The Kidderminsters, the Bournemouth away, the Grimsbys, the Hattricks. Yeah, there's so many. Swansea at home, Hull. There's so many. Boston's, of course, and like you said, the Scunnies. There's so many to choose from. How long have you got?
Have you got a particular goal that's your personal favourite?
Yeah, it's got to be my hat-trick for Grimsby. The right foot volley. They got it back to. We went 2-0 up. They got it back to 2-2, and then we just went down the right. Fletcher put a ball in, and I don't know how I did it. If we tried it again 20 times, it won't go in, but it did at that time. So yeah. That sticks in my mind.
you're saying all the right things, to endear yourself to the Lincoln fans, mate, which is why you've been voted in at number 8. But is there anybody that you can think of from around that time that you think's probably going to be in the top 100 with you, or around that area?
I thought Butch and Gainey. Obviously, because they midfield, they were absolutely fit young lads, and you had to be in our team. So I'm sure possibly Mazza, Morgs maybe. Who else? McAuley came later. I'll hand it over to you. You tell me.
Well, I'm sure you'll be able to hear it when the when the pod goes live, and we're going live now. So just congratulations again, man. And we're recording this on your birthday, so go and enjoy yourself, mate. Have a good evening. And is there anything you just want to say before we wrap it up? Yeah,
I just want to finish off by saying sending me condolences to Conor Mack's family. Sorry. It's a sad state of affairs. It's affected a lot of us, and just stay strong, and we'll all be there for you. And that's from us, the lads at North Edge Working Men's Club. As for the Lincoln fans, top draw, always a pleasure to come and see you. I'm always made welcome when I'm coming down to the bank, and I really do look forward to coming back down and spending some many hours getting drunk and having a laugh with you.
Excellent stuff, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you.
There we go. He's a absolutely phenomenal character. I mean, obviously, just away from the videos, condolences to the family of Conor, but he was. I think Simon was probably a little bit shaken up by what's happened, but he was good enough to talk to me for it, and he's dedicated his place at number 8 to Conor. But what a player. I think I was making some notes earlier because I do prep for this podcast, Gary, and I just put one word. Yeah, I just put one word. Just put hero. Like he came, and I think it's a thing that we've said before is that towards the end of that season, he wasn't scoring. He wasn't getting the goals that I think we were sort of expecting from him. But the fact is that he came and he absolutely just smashed it in those last few games. I mean, obviously the games against Scunny, it was 3-3. Was it? I think it got back. They got it back to 3-3, didn't they? And then we went with his 2 goals took it to 5-3, and then obviously the goal away at Glanford Park took it to 6-3 on aggregate. And just that. Oh, what a player! Some of the goals that I was researching them for the video. Some of them are just ridiculous. I mean, he mentioned the one against Grimsby for his hat trick, and how do you do that? It's just crazy.
What I'd say about I remember he came obviously in the summer of 2002 with Dean Cropper. And I remember watching a friendly, I think it was against Huddersfield or something like that, or one of the early games, and kind of he was hitting it from everywhere, and you could tell he was just he just wanted to play, come out non-league. He just had this kind of, I don't know, persona that he was just one of the lads. It's almost like he had turned up and they'd gone, "Have you got your boots?" And he's gone, "Yeah, I'll give it a go." And he was just so enthusiastic. And I confidently predicted that Dean Cropper would be a hero for Lincoln after watching those two play. For 7 months, I actually thought that I was probably going to be a little bit more accurate, because obviously Yeo, after I think he was sent off at Boston, struggled to score. He's part of a fairy tale. He's part of Imp's folklore. In the season 2005, 23 goals, Player of the Year 2005 as well. Gutted to see him go at the end of that year, and then I think he came back as well. So look, Simon Yeo firmly deserves his place at number 8. As we've only got 27 minutes left and 7 people to go through, shall we go smoothly into number 7?
Let's go for it.
May not talk about him for too long, but we shall see. Alan Long?
At number 7, Michael Bostwick.
I mean that no, where are we? There that says it all. What a man. Like I think in the most heterosexual way possible, I love Michael Bostwick.
And Harry Toffolo.
Yes, but honestly,
Rachel, if you're watching, I'm not sure about the first thing that he said. I think I really don't.
I mean, the thing is, Boz was just he of any player. I think he's my favourite player of recent years, at least, just possibly ever. Yeah, Cuban crying. He seemed to change when he crossed over the white line to get onto the pitch. I mean, he was that. Everybody that said, that knew him away from the pitch, just said that he was that man. He was a really, really nice bloke, but then he crossed over the line and he just turned it on. He was just a beast.
You say nice bloke. I mean, he was actually just reserved, quiet. You talk to the players, and you'd have a joke about who plays the music in the room, and it's like, oh, Bozzy will come in and just sit in the corner listening to his own. And for me, not turning up to his own contract signing media launch, where they had the empty chair. There was a certain enigma about Michael Bostwick that you don't get with footballers these days, and I don't think a little bit of enigma hurts every now and again, to be honest. And I think that's what you got.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be honest, he's the only player that I've ever known that. It's true. It is very true.
Well, it's true, because obviously, if people are listening in,
sorry,
just said that she's used to his Michael Bostwick love affair. His wedding picture is being replaced with the shirt, which says everything.
Yeah, we're getting the shirt framed and replacing a canvas from our wedding day with the shirt. So,
Pete Summer said if you walked in with your missus, you'd go back downstairs, put the kettle on, make him a brew, and hope it was okay for him. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, like, he was one of the only players that I know that has ever raised the atmosphere of a game with a tackle. That one against Peterborough, and everybody knows which one I'm on about.
Yeah, everyone does. Yeah.
Because the game was, flat. It wasn't really going anywhere, and then Bozzy put that tackle in, and the game just changed in a heartbeat. And that was Bozzy. I was gutted when he left. I really was, like, genuinely gutted.
I think, probably with hindsight, when you look at the fact he's out injured again, potentially, I think in terms of a footballing decision, hindsight and looking back retrospectively, it was the right one.
Yes.
But I think that it was still very tough to take because he was a battler and a fighter. And, he won trophies with Lincoln City. So, right. So we go from 2019's Player of the Year to 1983's Player of the Year. Alan Long, who is it?
At number 6, Glenn Cockerell.
Cockerell. So Ben, again, a little bit before your time, a bit before my time. I have met Glenn on a couple of occasions, but I think there's somebody better placed, live and direct from his holiday cottage in Cornwall. Let's bring in Dave Wilkinson.
By better place, you mean older, Gary? I know, yeah. No, Glenn Cockerell, what a player. Very much like Percy Freeman that Mark spoke about earlier. He was with us, and then we sold him to Swindon, and then he came back. Now, to be honest, when he went to Swindon initially, I wasn't too upset. I didn't particularly rate him in his initial spell. But when he came back, it was like a different player. And I've got to say, after Toffolo, he's the best player in my time, in my humble opinion. I always remember the game against Bournemouth. We beat them 9-0. It was Harry Redknapp's first game as a manager. Derek Bell and Gordon Hobson both got hat-tricks, and Glenn Cockerell got 2. And in the very last minute, he was thwarted by a fantastic save by the Bournemouth goalkeeper, who incidentally got man of the match that day. It was absolutely fantastic. What the score would have been without him, nobody knows. Now, had that goal gone in, 3 hat-tricks in the same side for one game, probably unheard of. I doubt if it's ever been done before. But yeah, one hell of a player. Very, very much. I think he started off as a forward, and that possibly wasn't his role, and that may be why I didn't rate him initially. When he came back, he was a midfield player, and he was the midfield dynamo. He was very much like Alec Woodyard, but he would thrust forward. He would win everything. He was all over the place, but when he got it, he would go forward himself. He'd carry the ball. He'd shoot from distance. Scored some fantastic goals, and yeah, thoroughly deserved his career. later on when he played for Southampton in, I was going to say the Premiership, but of course it was proper football in those days and Division 1. But yes, one hell of a player.
You see, that's interesting as well, because obviously we'll keep you in, Dave, for a second, because you've touched there on playing top-flight football for Southampton. We'll just pick up a couple of comments before we move on. Played up front in 82, 83. Nick Oxbury says he's in his top 5 as well. Best wishes, Nick. James Bride, fantastic running with the ball, almost Gaza-like, better than Hoddle in the Milk Cup. Kev Barwise, all-time third best Imps player. Facts he makes most Saints fans all-time 11, speaks volumes. Richard Godson, you always felt something was going to happen when Cockerell got the ball. Stuart Coulter, loved this player. I mean, it just keeps on going. Midfielder up and front, equally as good. Glenn Cockerell, my hero. Lincoln's Glenn Hoddle. It just doesn't stop. And I think that, wrong one. I think that that's testament to the fact that we're talking here about a generational vote where an awful lot of people are going to be far younger than me. And I never saw Glenn Cockerell play. So we'll go from Glenn Cockerell. We'll go from the superlatives from him to another one. Alan Long, who's at number 5?
Number 5, Gordon Hobson.
Now, before we play the video, I'll go back to you, Dave, and then we'll let you take a breather. Gordon Hobson.
Fantastic player. The finest debut I've ever seen. He played against Cambridge United, first game in the Football League. He hadn't played non-league football at any standard. He came in and he absolutely terrorised Cambridge. We beat them 4-1, if I remember rightly. Maurice Burton gave him man of the match. There was no competition. It had to be Hobson. But I can't ever recall Maurice ever giving it to a player on debut before. Absolutely fantastic. And I'll just tell you a quick funny story from that Bournemouth game that I touched on about Glenn Cockerell. I think I probably heard the funniest remark I've ever heard on a football terrace. If you remember, I said it was Harry Redknapp's first game. David Webb was in charge previously, the ex-Chelsea centre-half, and he got sacked in the week leading up to the game because he was discovered to be having an affair with one of the girls in the office at Bournemouth. Anyway, we were banging these goals in, and it was about the 6th or the 7th went in, and this fella near me just turned around and he said, "I bet David Webb's shagging that secretary and laughing his head off." And it just absolutely summed it up, and it was just a brilliant comment.
Well, look, thanks, Dave. We'll come back to you in a second, my friend.
All right.
We do have something from Gordon Hobson, which I'm going to play in a moment. 6 times top scorer in 79, 81, 83, 84, 89 and 90. 2 spells, both are successful. Player of the Year in 1985. Presented my granddad with a signed football after he retired on the field, which instantly endeared him to me. I saw him play. I couldn't do him justice purely on my own. I had to get Dave in. I was genuinely, I actually a little bit goosebumpy when it happened. I actually got to speak to Gordon earlier this week.
Okay, so I'm absolutely delighted to be here with a bona fide Lincoln City legend. You voted him as the 5th player, best player of a generation. Gordon Hobson, congratulations on the vote. How does it feel?
Hi, Gary. Yeah, a bit humbling, really, especially when you consider the audience of the vote. Probably anybody under 35 never saw me play. So, yeah, really proud about it. Thank you.
Wonderful. And look, you had a couple of great spells with Lincoln. Which memories really jump out at you?
There's so many, to be honest. I mean, obviously, I scored quite a few hat-tricks there, which were always good. In the second spell, scored a hat-trick away at Burnley. We had some great cup runs, Leicester, West Ham, Tottenham. Just in general, the time there was fantastic because of the camaraderie with the players. And there's just so many times. I just can't really give you any special ones. I enjoyed all my time there.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And we always hear tales of Colin Murphy from Steve Thompson. I mean, it sounds like it was a great group working under Murph. What was it like for you?
Oh, well, what a man. The best manager I ever had. Made me into a man as well, because I was a bit wayward when I was young, 20 years of age when I first went there. One of my biggest things was every half time and every full time you had to sit down. And if you picked a cup of tea up or something, you were told to put it down. You always had to listen to everything he said. And when I got transferred to Grimsby, the first time I ever had another manager, came off the pitch at half time, the first game of the season, and I just can't believe everybody's walking around and the manager's trying to talk and nobody was. And that was just not Colin's way. He just every time sit down and look at me and don't do anything while I'm talking. And what a man, what a manager, great manager.
Wonderful. And what other players from your generation, possibly from both spells, stood out as real top talents?
Well, once again, Colin Murphy had the, he went for youth and he brought in players from non-league. There's just, once again, there's so many of them. Trevor Peake, Tony Cunningham, Mick Harford, Glenn Cockerell, George Shipley, a great little player, Steve Thompson. There's just so many of them. Great characters, great players. And also, even in the first time when I went there, some of the older lads like Dennis Lee and Peter Gautier and Phil Hubbard, good pros and good leaders, and gave you a good upbringing.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time, Gordon.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so chatting to Gordon obviously was a real honour, a real pleasure. I've been wanting to do it for many, many years. Let's have a look at some of the comments that are coming in. Gordon Hobson, my fave player at that time, from Stu Coulter. Richard Godson, Gordon Hobson, creme de la creme, a member of the finest Lincoln City side I ever saw. Kev Barwise, my all-time favourite. Not many players score a hat-trick at Turf Moor when they're top of the table. Nick Oxbury, Hobbo, top man and player. I think I was lucky because I did get to see him play for Lincoln when he came back. He came from, funnily enough, from top flight Southampton, where he had been with Glenn Cockerell. I thought that he was unplayable in a Lincoln City shirt. I thought he was superb. Wonderful, wonderful player. And he is number 5. Got 15 minutes left to get through 4, so we are doing it. These shirts aren't particularly flattering for me.
I mean, before we came on air, we did have a quick look, and I think the first one was put you in an A cup, mate.
Yeah, I think it did as well. I put a bit of weight on, unfortunately, over lockdown. Right, so we are now into the top 4. Now, for those of you who are wondering where a local hero, where a recent hero is going to come, you may wonder no more, because Alan Long, who's at number 4?
At number 4, Matt Rhead.
The big dog.
Yeah.
I think time is going to continue to look favourably on Matt Rhead. He won. There's only 2 players on this entire list who have won 3 trophies with Lincoln City, and Matt Rhead was one of them, Harry Anderson the other. So he won the National League, he won League 2, and he won the AFL trophy. I think he matured as a player. When he say matured, he changed as a player. So, for instance, in 2016, he got 23 goals. In 2017, he was 15 goals. That's leading goal scorer 2 years in a row. 196 appearances, 50 goals. And by the way, the stats for Gordon Hobson, he'd actually got 386 appearances and 105 goals, Ben. But I just think Reedy was, when we talk about players who don't fit the mould, I think Reedy is that type of player. He was down to earth. I think the fact he'd come into football so late, he just, he knew what it was to be a fan. And he reacted to that. I think his inclusion this high up will be controversial for some. But I think when you look back over history, with 10, 15 years time, when you're talking about nearly 200 appearances, 50 goals, 3 trophies, 2 promotions, him being at the centre of most of that, it's going to be hard to deny that he absolutely deserves his place in the top 5.
100%. I mean, the comment from James Bride, superb footballer, don't be fooled by the size and the antics, reads a game like nobody else. He just did. Like, he has a footballing brain that is on a, it's almost on a par with anybody else. Like, he would, like he says, he would read the game and just sort of find out, figure out where he needs to be. Similar to Jamie Forrester in a way, like you were saying about him playing chess. He was. I mean, again, I came back to the club kind of midway through the National League promotion season, and it was, when you see what Reedy was about, and then looking back at the history of it, he was there saying, he's. I think the piece of commentary that's in the Macclesfield game actually got clipped out of the official one, the official DVD, but it's where they say him about really putting a transfer request in at the start of the season, and Danny and Nicky working so hard to keep him as part of the club, and just thank God he stayed, because he was pivotal in that season. And as Stu just mentioned, that the goal against Coventry when we came back up, it is such a cliche to say, oh, he's got a great touch for a big man, but you look at some of the football that he played, like, he's obviously there to, the big lump up forward, up front, that's going to get the ball punted up to him. But some of the touches that he played, like the little back heel for Waterfall's goal against Forest Green, the little flick there, he would do that all the time, and he'd just look at it and see, right, okay, I need to do this, and then it's just a tiny little touch. Phenomenal player, and like you say, I think time will cement his place in the top 5.
Wonderful stuff. I mean, we're short on time. I could talk about Matt Rhead. I think at the time he was called a legend, and people said, "Oh, legend gets bandied about quite a bit." Let's see. I think that now, I think we can safely say Matt Rhead is a Lincoln City legend. The love for him. I mean, I was clicking some of the comments there. The love for Reedy is phenomenal. It keeps on coming through. So excellent. Well done, Matt Rhead. Now, the next player is the only person in the top 9 to either not have won Player of the Year or finished as leading goal scorer. He hasn't won a trophy with Lincoln City either. So we're talking about a player based on skill. He's already been immortalised on the 100th podcast without ever being mentioned, courtesy of Chris Ray. Alan Long, who am I talking about?
Number 3, Pit again.
What a left foot. Like, if there was a Lincoln City Hall of Fame for things, Peter Gain's left foot would be in that Hall of Fame. It was just, what a player. I mean, I'm going to let you talk about Peter Gain the way that I spoke about Harry Toffolo, Gareth.
I could. Do you know what? I genuinely could, because Peter Gain was everything I loved to see. First of all, he came in, you could tell he was miles ahead of anyone in our squad, and yet Alan Buckley continued to play his son ahead of him. But, he stayed, he stuck around. He was one that stayed through the administration as well, which in my book, the 2 defining moments were GM Vauxhall Conference relegation and administration, and players that stuck with us through those periods earned massive respect from me. When Peter Gain was on form, he was unplayable. And you talk to anybody who played with him at that level, and they will always ask, how was he playing at that level? Why was he not playing further on? And I just don't think his personality was geared towards that kind of being a footballer. And from what I understand, he's quite reserved. I tried to get him on. He agreed to do an interview, and then I just couldn't get hold of him. And I was pretty gutted, actually, to speak to him and Gordon Hobson in the same day. I would have given up. I would have retired.
That's it. I quit. That's it. I'm done.
Mic drop. I'm out. I remember some magical game moments, but there was one game I can remember in particular, was against Hartlepool at home. I seem to think that it was in the 2002-03 season. Hartlepool, I think, again, I might be corrected, it might be the year after, but Hartlepool were runaway leaders. They went up either that year or the year after. We beat them at their place. I think it was 2-0. It could have been 8-5 to them. It was a scintillating game, and Gain was just phenomenal. And it was that night, I remember just coming home. I've been with my mate Lee, actually, who don't go with it. He doesn't go anymore. And I remember us just saying, he's just a footballer. And my dad always talks about it. I mention it all the time. I say it on Matchday Live. My dad talks about footballers, not in the context of lining up for Lincoln, but people who, when they've got the ball at their feet, they play football, they pass, they create, they flick. They're not the grafters, they're not the workhorses, they're not the aggressive type, they're footballers. Peter Gain was an artist. You put a ball at his feet, it was like putting a paintbrush in Van Gogh's hand. And that's all I've got to say about it, to be honest.
You're absolutely right. thing is, I distinctly remember him being a bit of a free kick wizard, but that's not the case from what people, from looking back on things. I don't know why I've got that memory in my head, but Lincoln's Iniesta, yeah, he was just. I mean, he was first name on the team sheet for me, absolutely every single week. First name down on the team sheet, Pete again, and it, just great talent.
Yeah, I did an interview with him. Dan Atkins said there about him running the length of the pitch for Peterborough and doing the knee slide. I did an interview with him where he kind of explained that away, and I think that's actually stopped him ever coming back to the club, even just as a supporter, because it's played on his mind. And I think there was some abuse that he had taken before the game because there was a misconception that he had left the club for money. And if you look back over the interview, I might even find it and republish it. It certainly wasn't particularly the case. Another one of those issues where what we as fans perceive to have happened wasn't what actually happened. Doesn't diminish 263 appearances, 22 goals, developed as a wonderful footballer. We've got 2 names left. We're going to call Dave in just a second. We're about to bring in number 2 in your all-time list. He is a 2-time Player of the Year in 1980 and 1981. He was an FA Cup winner in 1987.
At number 2, Trevor Peake.
It's Trevor Peake. Dave Wilkinson, talk to us about Trevor Peake.
Fantastic player. When you gave me this task, Gary, I started to think about Trevor Peake and think of some, memorable moments from him, and I was just struggling to think of any. And that, in a way, sums him up. He was just so dependable. He was there week in, week out. With an 8 out of 10 performance, absolute minimum. I can't recall him scoring many goals. I looked at the stats, and he got 7 in 170 or something like that. So I never saw him as a threat from corners like you do with Monsmer and you did with Waterfall and Raggett, McAuley and McComb, going back a bit earlier. But Peake was just nothing got past him. He was partnered with Steve Thompson for a spell, and I seem to remember he played with David Carr off him for a spell as well at the centre. Now, David Carr was quite small for a centre-back, but the pair of them, they were just absolutely brilliant. Nothing got past him, and it was no surprise to see that he won the Cup with Coventry. Reading about him recently, and he's been coach for the assistant director of the academy at Leicester City for the last 15 years, and he's just retired. And the eulogy that's coming out about him is just unbelievable. He's obviously so highly thought of there, and everything was about the players he was coaching rather than him. And I think that probably sums him up as a man. And again, I saw Malcolm's comment there, and I can't disagree with that. And I think, again, was it his personality that cost him perhaps an even bigger role in the game, because he was a very, very quiet, unassuming bloke, but he went about his job absolutely superbly, as your vote will attest.
I've been Kev Barwise again, a big Lincoln sport for many years, slightly longer than myself. Peake should have been capped by England. What a player, so fast and read the game superbly. What I find remarkable as somebody that's come in after Trevor Peake, and obviously I knew of him, my dad would tell me about him when we first started going, is we are now, 40 years from when he played for Lincoln. He played centre-half, and here he is at number 2, ahead of players like Gordon Hobson, 6-time leading scorer, ahead of Glenn Cockerell, who went on to play in Division 1, ahead of Steve Thompson, Tony Cunningham, George Shipley. Wonderful, wonderful players. I was watching the votes. I was adding the votes up on a kind of a daily basis, and I watched Peake slowly rise. And I think it was because a lot of younger people voted very early. So there was your Matt Reeds and your Peter Gaines, but Peake just kept creeping up. And it's hard, I think, sometimes for people like myself and Ben who haven't seen him play to understand exactly how good he was. And obviously he actually played his first game at Sincil Bank against Lincoln for Nuneaton Borough in the FA Cup.
That's right.
So
I can't think of anybody in my generation that's ever had a bad word to say about Trevor Peake. Now, even some of the really, really great players we've had, could be somebody who doesn't like them for whatever reason, but I have never heard anybody say other than good things about Trevor Peake.
Well, I think, and again, I actually mentioned to Gordon Hobson, if we'd had more time, Gordon was going to put me in touch with Trevor to do an interview, but unfortunately, time's just got the better of me. So, maybe I'll try and we'll talk to him on the podcast in the future. Look, Dave, thank you so much for your input, my friend. It's been absolutely vital. Enjoy the rest of your holiday, and hopefully, I'll see you at Sinsawang soon.
Hopefully, yes. Get Boris sorted.
Take care, Dave. Thanks, pal.
Cheers, Dave.
Right, we are nearly there. Let's have a couple of looks. There's another Trevor Peake. Nick Oxbury says 3 of mine are in the top 10 so far. Trevor Peake just class on the field. I think we also decided that Nick Oxbury had put Gomez Darley in last night. When Nick messaged me, he sent me a text message while I was sat watching the telly, and he said, "Who did I pick in my 5?" So, I only had 2,500 votes, Nick. So hang on a second, I'll get out my Philo facts. So there we go. Right, so we are now down to the last one. So unfortunately,
well, that's it, mate. We've hit 9 o'clock now. That's
9
it.
o'clock.
We've run out of time.
Imagine if you voted Ben Hutchinson and Drew Broughton, which one's it going to be? Look, before we go to number 1, let's just have a quick rundown of the final 25 to 2.
Number 25, Harry Anderson. At number 24, Kevin Austin. Number 23, Graham Bressington. At number 22, Alan Power. At 21, David Putnam. At number 20, Darren Huckerby. Number 19, Paul Farman. At number 18, Grant Brown. At number 17, Mick Harford. Number 16, Jamie Forrester. At number 15, Dave Smith. At number 14, Harry Toffolo. At number 13, Alan Marriott. At number 12, Gary Taylor-Fletcher. At number 11, Percy Freeman. At number 10, Gareth McAuley. Number 9, Paul Morgan. At number 8, Simon Yeo. At number 7, Michael Bostwick. At number 6, Glenn Cockerell. Number 5, Gordon Hobson. At number 4, Matt Rhead. Number 3, Peter Gain. At number 2, Trevor Peake.
Now, in my panic, I picked up the wrong shirt. I have picked up the wrong shirt. James Biddles, am I on the Fanta? I was. It ran out about 8 o'clock, mate, and I haven't had time to go and get another one yet. I'm looking forward to one, to be honest. Well, it's not much of a reveal, but ladies and gentlemen, let's go to Alan Long for your Stacey West top 100, top number 1. I'm getting all confused here. Best player of a generation.
Number 1, Gareth Ainsworth.
There he is.
Gareth Ainsworth, 97 appearances, 41 goals, top scorer 2 years in a row, 13 in 96, 24 in 97. Player of the year 2 seasons in a row, 96 and 97. The picture there was actually taken on his final game against Scarborough when he hit his first hat trick. But for me, I had Gareth Ainsworth number 1. The reason I picked Gareth Ainsworth number 1, I turned 18 in 1996. I liked Britpop music. I liked kind of that what went on to be kind of Cool Britannia, which got achingly painful when they started rocking up at Downing Street. But I was a young person. I was that age where you were turning into an adult, and you wanted role models who kind of reflected that. And that with Gareth Ainsworth, I'd watch him play football on a Saturday, then I'd play in the same pool league as him on a Thursday night in the Short Ferry League when he played out of Hainton. And look, just having that isn't enough, but he helped revolutionise a side. He came in the year that we opened with Putnam and West. Wicks came in, the team fell apart. Johnny Beck came in turn things around. And I know that there's other people, there's the likes of Colin Green, who is a fan of the same sort of era as myself. And I just think, he captured a moment. He captured kind of for a certain age, if you're 40, 41, 42, Gareth Ainsworth was just something more than a footballer. He symboled rebirth for the team, and he scored an awful lot of goals. And often it was Terry's long one, Colin Alside's head, Gareth Ainsworth's toe, 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, 3-1, whatever. But he is a legend. It hurts a little bit that we're naming him as this, and he probably cares a lot less about Lincoln than we do him. And when you look at some of the players on the list, like your Gordon Hobsons and your Simon Yayos, that's not the case. But such is football, unrequited love.
Yeah, I mean, I've put in here in my notes. I just said, he's a player with devastating ability. The day that he left, or the day it was confirmed that he was leaving, I left school. I went into the newsagents back when the Echo was daily. Walked into the newsagents, looked at the back page and saw, Ainsworth leaving the Imps, and legitimately, it was the first time that football made me cry. It was genuinely heartbreaking when he left. I mean, his record speaks for itself. The fact is that he's gone on. He went on to have a good, decent playing career, and now he's doing what he can do. In management at Wycombe. I think the fact that he's number one doesn't surprise me because of the fervour that existed around Gareth Ainsworth when Danny Cowley and Nicky Cowley left the club. The number of people that were, including myself, I'm not going to pretend I was free of this, but the number of people that had this, this kind of passionate need to have Gareth Ainsworth come back to the club as the manager, that was just a symbol of what he meant. And I mean, I would have been 12, 13 at the time, I think, when he left. But in the same way that you say that, you were a bit older than, obviously, a bit older than myself, and you were in that area where, you were listening, finding your music, finding yourself. I was still quite young, but I was finding myself as a Lincoln City fan in a way. I was understanding what Lincoln City meant to me because I understood what it meant to my dad. And the fact that, we had this player that everybody identified with, and everybody, we saw the goals that he scored, we saw what he could do, we saw his ability, and then he just he left, and that was it. It was that was the first time that I really understood what supporting a football team can, how supporting a football team can be really devastating as well as being fantastic. I can't imagine there would be too many people that would be able to argue, apart from Bubs, that Gareth Ainsworth should be number one.
I was just trying to find that actually, but there's been so many comments. Bubs, not for him, not Ainsworth. And that's fair, fair enough. Football is, he's like art, isn't it? Where the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What I will say is that of the 2,500 votes, and bear in mind they were staged from 5 to 1, Gareth Ainsworth had 148 more votes than anybody else at all. In fact, Matt Rhead had the second amount of votes, but he was often the fifth player rather than the top ones. Gareth Ainsworth had the most amount of number one votes. He actually had twice as many votes as Trevor Peake. And from the first 5 or 6 votes, and that tells you how many people rate Trevor Peake as number one over and above the others. He led from the first 10 votes right the way through. It was always going to be Gareth Ainsworth in the scoring system. He's hundreds and hundreds of points ahead of anybody else. The top 3 after that, Gain, Reed and Peake, were all very close. They were swapping and rotating all the time. But Ainsworth was just miles and miles ahead. So time-wise, we haven't done bad at all.
No, I think we actually hit the 9 o'clock list.
We did. So James Biddles is saying, what was yours and Ben's votes, Gary?
Okay. Well, I actually have mine available on my phone. I've had it screenshotted since I took it. So
okay.
My top 5 in reverse order. Nathan Arnold was number 5. The reason being that if it weren't for Nathan Arnold, I wouldn't be sitting here doing this podcast with Gary. Like, it's as simple as that. I hated football. I hated going back to Sincilbank, and I've made no bones about it. But I went back for the Ipswich game, and Nathan Arnold's goal put love back into me for football that I did not think was possible to exist. And for that, I will always be eternally grateful to Nathan for what he did, and the fact that he kind of introduced me and you as well at the event that he did. So it's sort of, there's a lot for Nathan there. Number 4 was Simon Yeo. Number 3 was Peter Gain. Number 2 was Michael Bostwick, and number 1 was Gareth Ainsworth. It's just a phenomenal player that Gareth was. I mean, your top 5, Gaz. Did you actually vote, or did you? Have a top 5 written?
I did vote. I actually put the first vote in, and we've got a famous watch, a great show, guys. Look forward to a pint back when it comes over my round. I still owe Mr. Yeo a drink for arguably one of the most memorable moments of the noughties, that Torquay game. We talk about everything else. We talk about Bournemouth and the Scunthorpe games, which were phenomenal. But I remember that Torquay game. I was living on Atwater Close on Glebe Park, and I got A4 paper, cut out the words "The Imps" in A4 paper. Each one was a letter, and stuck it on the bonnet of my Rover 214 with sellotape. And after Simon's goal, Lee and I, my mate Lee and I, drove around Lincoln, just literally doing laps, playing Hey Jude on repeat all the way around. I went out that night in town, and I could do it back then. And I won't say what I was powered by, but there's a picture of me with a majority of the squad. I didn't think Simon was there, but Bimo was there, Ben Sedgemore, Alan Pierce was there, Mazza, and there's just a picture of me, and there's me, eyes rolling back in my head, with all these players. It was the first time I'd ever met any footballers, really. Even though I was poacher, I hadn't kind of gone round them. Phenomenal. Having said that, my top 5, and I can't remember the exact 1 to 5, but it was Ainsworth, Putnam, Hobson, Gain, and I think it might have been Paul Morgan. I'd have to double check, or Graham Bressington. But it was definitely Hobson, Ainsworth, Gain, and Putnam. Tony Lormer. Sorry, it was Tony Lormer. But again, I think when you're a kid and you watch a player play, they leave a more lasting kind of impression on you, because I think you tend to watch football in a different way. So you watch the goals and see the goals, and the bits that happen in between sometimes are the bits where it's like, Mom, what time is it? Can I have a burger? And when you're like our age, you kind of sit and watch everything, so you see things very differently. So, Gordon Hobson, Paul Smith was a player who I would love to have voted for.
Which Paul Smith?
Not the one that came from Nottingham Forest, the other Paul Smith. Both good players for the club. A lot of people have mentioned Steve Holmes, not in the top 100. I mean, Steve
Holmes. I mean, bizarrely, Steve Holmes, he got in touch with me on Twitter the other week. He mentioned, we had a quick conversation, and he just said about... I said the only thing I think we were missing was somebody with Steve Holmes' penalty taking ability in the current squad, because he put them away, didn't he?
What was he messaging you for?
It wasn't messaging me. He didn't slide into my DMs. He wasn't.
Did you slide into his DMs? Were you looking for a new body in Toffolo?
Yeah, I need a new ginger co-host that's not going to take the piss out of me.
You were looking for a menage a trois to watch on, were you? Fantastic stuff. Malcolm Johnson's been with us all night. He's got to go. He's told the time has flown by. Look, at one point tonight, we had 154 people watching this. There's 107 now watching us do the bit at the end of the podcast where we forget we're recording, and just give each other some stick. Look, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of the players who very kindly agreed to give up their time for an interview. Massive thank you to Alan Long for giving up his time as well. Huge thank you to everybody that has watched the podcast tonight and has listened to the podcast over the last 99 episodes. Thank you to the club. I'm on a thing called the Fans Hub. I'm sure a lot of you signed up for it, and there's a lot of other content creators there who would give a knacker to be as kind of helped by the club as we are. The club so kindly put out the tweet earlier. Huge thank you to Chris Gray, and in an unusual show of kindness towards this guy, thank you, Ben, for putting some of the videos together, all of the long videos together, not my favorite videos.
Number 9, Paul Morgan.
That wasn't the one I meant.
At number 8, Simon Yeo.
Yeo.
So yeah, thank you to everybody. I hope I haven't missed anybody.
No, absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's downloaded an episode of the podcast, listened to an episode of the podcast, subscribed to it. I mean, this started as what I think I sort of came up to outside the centre spot, and it will always be the centre spot. It will always be the centre spot.
You messaged
and I said,
me on social media first.
Yeah, like, would you fancy doing a podcast? And it was like, well, all right, I guess. I mean, I barely knew, and it was a bit of a stretch to kind of say, oh yeah, I want to be a part of your website and do your stuff, but like, it's been ridiculous, really. Like, I've not been able to have that link to the club in such a way. And I mean, obviously you've said about the links that we've got with the club and the support that we get from the club. I cannot believe how supportive the club have been of this venture, to be honest. Like, we sort of decided to do it for a bit of a laugh and something extra to put on the website every week, but it's turned into something more than that. I mean, I've had messages today from people within the club. I've had people outside the club as well message me saying good luck, and it's just, it's just phenomenal. I am getting totes emotion. Adam's saying I'm getting totes emotion. I am. Like, it's legitimately, this has been.
Don't know what totes emotion means. Is it foreign?
Totally emotional, Gary. Yeah, totally emotional.
I know, it's kid speak. But I forgot I forgot to thank Dave and Mark, which was awful of me, because they were
of course
with their insight as well. Yeah. So my apologies there. Yeah, look, from my point of view, I tried to get a couple of podcasts off the ground. I'd been part of one that somebody else ran. I'd approached a person who was going to do one, and then kind of said they were concentrating on their content, and then kind of you and I got together with it. Never thought we'd get to 100. Had so many highlights. Obviously the live show, this one, we've had a few low lights where we've had terrible recordings go out. The
one the other week was horrendous. To give you an idea, basically, when we record, normally we have a Skype call going so we can talk to each other, and then we have a separate program. Ray just enjoyed the piece and asked if you can carry on for another hour. Might as well. But we have a separate program that records and then uploads it as it's recording. So if there's any problems with any internet connections or anything like that, it can sometimes garble the Skype call. So it's just, on very odd occasions, I'll get like a couple of seconds of gas, and then I'll get like silence, and then I'll get a quickly sped up version of catch up. I'm not doing my cleaning. Rachel's telling Gaz to tell me to stop waffling on. It's not happening. But honestly, like, this has been. I've loved it. Absolutely loved. Doing the podcast. It's given us opportunities that I didn't think I'd get as a fan.
You said loved it in past tense. You can keep doing it. Then I'm not getting rid of you.
So far, I've loved it so far.
Just a quick one. Jamie Shaw, when his Plymouth review, Ipswich preview pod going to be out? We might struggle with that because Ben has family commitments. So I might do a short live. We're not going to call it a podcast because podcast 101 is coming up. We're going to do a Room 101 themed podcast. So it's all specials now. We've got to. That will maybe something that I do on a video. Quick couple more before we wrap up. Congratulations on the 100 from Roy, top man and a good friend. Steve, not seen for a long while, another good friend of mine. Congrats you on the 100th episode. Great as always. Bub's Gaz costume changes have been better than yours, Ben.
All right, I'll get my top off.
Oh, easy. And Richard Godson says, have you just won an Oscar, Ben?
I love the Academy. No.
Right, so ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I think that's enough. What we shall do is we'll play out with the video, then the feed will end. Please go to the forum. Have I got the forum? There it is. Please go to the forum. You can find it on the Stacey West. It says at the top on the forum. Please go there and comment. The more clicks, the more comments, we will raise some money for the football club. Struggling to go at the minute, but there's a few people going on there, which is great. Thank you to those that do. And I think the final comment of the night can go to Rachel. Well done, guys. So that's Ben's much better half. You've been great. We've not been bad. Thank you very much.
See
Goodbye,
you later, guys.